Hi, everyone, this is the Encyclopedia channel. This program will explain Nicholas Taleb's Anti-Fragility. In modern society, one of the most common words we hear is anxiety. Some are anxious about money, some are anxious about family, and some are anxious about physical health. Although the objects are different, in the final analysis, they are all anxious about the uncertain future. In order to calm anxiety, we have made a lot of efforts, such as working hard to make money and exercising, so that when the crisis comes, we have the ability to resist. In fact, it is precisely those things that cannot be predicted in advance that really have a huge impact on your life. So, in the face of an uncertain future, is it possible for us to completely avoid risks? If the risk cannot be completely avoided, is it possible for us to bear the negative impact caused by the risk, and even use the unknown risk to gain benefits? After watching this film, you can understand these problems. It comes down to one point: risks cannot be avoided in advance. Only by understanding risks and improving your anti-fragility can you take advantage of risks and gain benefits. The author of this book, Nicholas Taleb, has been called one of the greatest thinkers of our time. In 2007, Taleb published the phenomenon-level bestseller Black Swan, which gave an early warning of the subprime mortgage crisis, but Wall Street ignored the warning and took no action. In the second year, the financial crisis broke out and spread rapidly around the world. Taleb, who had made an early warning, made a fortune by shorting the US stock market. Black Swan has since become synonymous with those unpredictable major and rare events. And the anti-fragility we interpret in this issue is a step forward on the basis of Black Swan. Black Swan mainly explains phenomena and theories, while Anti-Fragile not only explains uncertainty more thoroughly, but also figure out how to solve the Black Swan incident. Our interpretation will also follow this order: first briefly introduce Taleb and the Black Swan incident, and then specifically analyze how the concept of anti-fragility proposed by Taleb responds to uncertainty. First part. Born in Lebanon in 1960, Taleb started his career in business and later as a trader. On October 19, 1987, the stock market crash broke out in the United States. The Dow Jones Index fell by 22%, and tens of billions of dollars disappeared out of thin air. However, Taleb had a foresight. He made a fortune by shorting the stock market and achieved financial freedom at the age of 27. In 2001, the September 11 incident occurred, and the Dow Jones Index fell 17.5%. Taleb made a fortune again by shorting US stocks in advance. Therefore, when he entered the public eye with the book Black Swan in 2007, he had actually made a fortune in silence for a long time. With Black Swan, he was also hired as a university professor. The industry describes Taleb as buying stocks like buying lottery tickets, but unlike ordinary people who only spend money and don't win the lottery, Taleb wins once he buys, and once he wins the first prize. In Taleb's view, this kind of success is mainly due to his research on uncertainty. Here are two important concepts to remind you of: uncertainty and risk. Keynes, an expert on financial crisis, said this. He said that the so-called risk is knowing what will happen, but the possibility of it happening is random and has a certain probability. For example, when rolling dice, we know that the result must be one of the 6 numbers, and the probability of each number appearing is 1/6. But the uncertainty is that we don't know what's going to happen. Therefore, uncertainty makes us more fearful and uneasy than risk. Taleb used the word Black Swan to describe the kind of unpredictable major and rare events, and the main content of his work is to study Black Swan events. The word Black Swan was first used to refer to things that cannot exist. Because Europeans have only seen white swans, they think that all swans in the world are white. The appearance of black swans in Australia broke the experience and cognition formed by Europeans over the years, and black swans suddenly became a small probability event. Synonym. The black swan has 3 characteristics, which are unpredictability, significant impact, and explainability after the fact. Let's look at them separately. Unpredictable means that there is no way to predict when the black swan will appear. The author Taleb encountered the biggest black swan event in his life when he was a teenager. A large-scale civil war broke out in his home country Lebanon. At that time, many people thought that the war would end in a few days. His grandfather was the Minister of Defense at the time, and he found that his grandfather's predictions about the war were no more accurate than the taxi drivers on the street. Later, Taleb went to the Wharton School of Business in the United States. He thought that the CEOs of the world's top 500 companies should know what was going on in the world, but those CEOs were no better than his grandfather. From this, Taleb draws a conclusion: no one knows what is happening in the world and what is going to happen. The second characteristic is that the impact is significant. Not to say that it affects a company, a region, or even a country, but that this kind of impact will actually change the world. For example, the 9.11 incident, the Second World War, and the nuclear leak in Japan have all changed the pattern of the entire world to a certain extent. Taleb believes that human history does not crawl slowly. These small number of black swan events guide our society to leap from one fault to another, and also determine the life direction of each of us. Think about the major events in your life, such as which university you went to, what kind of boss you met after graduating from college, and your lover. These things all meet the condition of being unpredictable and have a great impact on you. It basically determines where you live today, what job you do, and whether you are happy or not. The last feature is that it is interpretable after the fact. This feature is very interesting, and it has something to do with our perspective on issues. This, Taleb points out, greatly reduces the importance we place on black swan events. Because of the same thing, looking at it beforehand and looking at it afterwards feels completely different. If you look at it from the perspective of the past, you will find that there is no reason for this to happen, and there is no way to predict it at the time, all reasonable explanations. For example, Taleb mentioned a book called Berlin Diaries, What the World War II Correspondents in Germany Learned, which described what happened in the early days of World War II from the perspective of war reporters. These reporters who were on the battlefield at the beginning of World War II had no idea what was going on at the time, and they had no idea what Hitler would do next. At that time, France, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and the United States did not take Hitler seriously at all, so Britain and France were so passive in the early days of World War II because no one knew that a world-class war would break out. But after World War II, everyone can find all kinds of details to prove Hitler's ambitions, and he speaks clearly and logically, proving that World War II is inevitable. In fact, World War II is still the same World War II, but looking at it beforehand is completely different from looking afterward. Since black swan events are so unpredictable, why does Taleb seem to be able to successfully predict what will happen in the future? Taleb divides everything into three categories: fragile, resilient, and anti-fragile. This taxonomy is so special that it is the basis of Taleb's research on anti-fragility. In this trichotomy, fragile things like a stable environment, and once the environment changes or is uncertain, such things are easily destroyed. For example, in Greek mythology, Damocles hangs a sword on his head. This sword is tied to the beam by a horse's tail hair. The sword may fall at any time, but no one knows when it will fall. Damocles in this state is vulnerable. The second category is tough things. This kind of thing is not very dependent on the environment. No matter how the environment changes, it will not change. For example, the legendary phoenix burns itself every 500 years and is reborn again and again, so the phoenix is strong and resilient. The third category of things, which is what this book focuses on, is anti-fragile things. This kind of thing is the most amazing thing. The more volatile, random, and chaotic the external environment is, the more it will not be harmed, but it can use this fluctuating environment to thrive. For example, another creature in the legend, the Hydra, has countless heads. Every time a head is cut off, 2 heads will grow back. So Hydra is anti-fragile. External attack not only does not destroy it, but makes it stronger. This kind of trichotomy of things is actually very common in our lives. When most people encounter an unexpected situation, they first choose the solution of vulnerability, such as quickly strengthening prevention, and at the same time researching why the situation happened, then speculating on the worst situation, and then preparing for the response based on this worst prediction. After the 9.11 incident, the U.S. approach was to strengthen air traffic control, upgrade the security system, and provide more budget for the intelligence system. All in all, it is to fill in all the loopholes in advance. The reason why people do this is that on the one hand, human beings have the nature of pursuing certainty. On the other hand, the research goal of many disciplines is to pursue the optimal solution, that is, the best solution. But we live in a world full of uncertainties. In such an environment, it is impossible to have a single optimal solution, and it is impossible to fill all the loopholes in advance. Think about it. Has there never been a financial crisis in the history of the United States? In 1987, Taleb already made a fortune by shorting the stock market. Why did he make another fortune in 2008? Shouldn't the loophole have been plugged long ago? In the statement of apology issued by the Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan to the U.S. Congress, there is a very familiar sentence. This sentence is the reason. He said, "The financial crisis in 2008 has never happened before." You see, this time the loopholes are plugged, and next time there will be new problems and new loopholes will emerge. This actually contains a very critical problem. In this fragile system, the relationship between cause and effect is nonlinear. That is to say, given a cause, we have no way to predict the inevitable result, and a small cause is likely to bring serious consequences that we cannot bear. Modern people hope to build an indestructible system by predicting the future. In the final analysis, this idea is to force the non-linear relationship between cause and effect to be a predictable linear relationship. And Taleb believes that in order to be invincible in a constantly changing world, everyone and every organization must embrace change and turn themselves into an anti-fragile system that behaves like life rather than like a machine. Survive. This is because an anti-fragile system can benefit from uncertainty. For example, we look at evolutionary issues from the perspective of an individual. If an individual wants to survive the competition and become stronger and stronger, he must experience some small-scale and low-level setbacks or injuries, which is the so-called infrustration. Grow in. If the injury is sustained, the individual will gradually develop anti-fragility from complete vulnerability. When we expand to the perspective of the group, in the face of risks, individual mistakes are a good thing, because individual mistakes provide the whole group with experience and lessons that can be used for reference. In the process of absorbing this experience and lessons, the group gradually develops anti-fragility of the entire group. If we take the camera a little farther, from the perspective of nature, even if a species is completely extinct due to an extreme event, it is no big deal, because it is part of the operation of the whole nature. Evolution does not serve a certain species, but it is at the service of the whole nature. Summarizing the analysis of these levels, we can abstract a truth: the existence of anti-fragility provides a possibility for the system to evolve to a more complete stage. That's why Taleb titled his book Anti-Fragile. The second part. So how can the anti-fragility system be established? Taleb gave a three-step suggestion, which is to reduce vulnerability, adopt a barbell strategy, and attack rationally and actively. These three steps are progressive. Let's look first at reducing vulnerability by reducing headwinds. This suggestion means that we should reduce the probability of exposing ourselves to fatal risks, such as the negative black swan phenomenon, and you should try to avoid it. For a person, the simplest point is to try to avoid engaging in high-risk industries. For a company, you must first survive. The premise of entrepreneurial decision-making must be to let the enterprise survive first. You should not take the risk of making a decision that may bring disaster to the enterprise, otherwise the enterprise will disappear, and there is no need to talk about building its anti-fragility. This principle sounds very simple. I believe that many entrepreneurs will not be particularly aggressive when making decisions, and they will not choose the kind of thing that will close the company if they are not careful. But as we said before, in a fragile system here, there is a non-linear relationship between cause and effect. It is very likely that you decide to do something just for a small profit, but the loss caused by this matter is unbearable for you. These are definitely not alarmist talk. The most famous example is that during the 2008 financial crisis, the investment banks in the United States underwrote extremely risky non-performing assets in order to earn some small profits from insurance fees. At first, they did get small profits, but then, the risk got out of control, extreme things happened, a large number of banks with weak systems went bankrupt, and finally led to a worldwide financial crisis. It now appears that even the investment banks, which claimed to have brought together a large number of elites at the time, did not realize the fragility of the financial system. How difficult and how important. After we have noticed that we need to reduce the probability of exposure to fatal risks, we have the opportunity to talk about the second step in building an anti-fragile system, which is to use the barbell strategy to enhance anti-fragility. In Taleb's view, the barbell strategy is the solution to all uncertain problems. The two ends of the barbell are heavy, and the middle is light. For us, it means that we should pay attention to the two extreme situations of excellent and extremely bad, and we should avoid the middle situation in the middle. For example, you can put most of your resources on things with certain benefits and small enough risks, and at the same time put a small amount of resources on things with high risks and high returns, and finally give up those things with medium risks and medium returns. In the face of the black swan event, the most attractive point of the barbell strategy is that it makes up for the problem that the risk of rare events cannot be calculated and evaluated. From the moment the barbell is established, your maximum loss has been determined, and it is subject to the causal relationship. Nonlinear effects: the small amount of resources you invest in the high-risk part is likely to bring more than expected returns. Another typical application of the barbell strategy is the human knowledge structure. To give an example, it is often a special professional and specific ability for a person to walk in society and settle down. For example, if you know how to write code, this ability is highly deterministic. As long as you write good code, making money is a matter of course. The ability to survive is not writing code, but swimming. To give another example, there is a book called Shakespeare. In that book, it is said that one of the important reasons why Shakespeare was able to create famous works is that he was especially good at real estate speculation and made a lot of money by real estate speculation. With money, he doesn't have to worry about making a living, and he doesn't have to write scripts that deliberately please the audience and those in power. So you see, the great writer Shakespeare is also a master of barbell strategy. Therefore, in the face of huge unknowns, only specific knowledge or skills are often fragile, and people must learn to enhance their anti-fragility. If you still want to go a step further and allow yourself to be more proactive in obtaining greater benefits, Taleb said, you can also try the third step, which is active geographical trial and error. That is, on the basis of following the barbell strategy, we find ways to increase the probability of positive black swan events. The positive black swans mentioned here are those black swan events that are beneficial to us. Of course, we cannot be sure whether a black swan event will happen, but we can increase this probability through conscious trial and error. An example is given in the book. There is a captain named Sturm, who is very good at salvaging sunken ships that have been missing for many years. In 2007, he discovered a Spanish frigate sunk by the British in 1804. The value of this ship is as high as $1 billion today. How did the captain discover the ship? In fact, he is actively putting himself in the positive black swan. Discovering such a high-value shipwreck itself is a positive black swan event, but the probability of it happening is extremely low. How can you benefit from this kind of event? His approach was rational trial and error. For example, he first analyzes all the sea areas where sunken ships may appear, and then divides the sea area into small squares, marking the probability of sunken ships in each square, and then formulates a search plan to ensure that each small square with the highest probability has no. After the ship sank, it moved to the next lower probability sea area. He started looking for the square with the highest probability, and eliminated one square after another. The more squares he eliminated, the higher the probability of finding the sunken ship in the remaining places. This is what Taleb said: we find a field where a positive black swan event may occur, and then find a way to use the lowest cost to try the highest probability to promote such a thing to happen, so that we can deal with uncertainty with more initiative. This third method is especially suitable for entrepreneurs, because many times, an entrepreneur's entrepreneurial idea comes from his flash of inspiration. For example, when you squeeze the subway to get off work, you suddenly find that there are so many people coming and going in the subway every day, but there is no place to buy water to drink. If you can make an automatic juicer in the subway, it will not only quench your thirst, but also drink it in one step. There are nutritious fruit juices. How good this business is. Think about it, there are millions of passengers on the subway every day, and if 10% of them buy it, you post it. The more you think about it, the more you feel that you will become the second Bezos, and then you decide to sell your house and land to raise funds to recruit troops. Invested in entrepreneurship, research, and development of automatic juicer. As a result, the company spent half a year on research and development, and the money was almost spent. When it was put into the market, it was found that no one bought it. After 3 months, it had to close down in pain. This entrepreneurial process is actually that you expect you to become the second Bezos. This is a positive black swan event, but your approach is to invest all your capital in high-risk areas, which violates the barbell strategy. You may be confused, isn't it said that starting a business requires all-out efforts, putting it to death and reviving it? It is really a way to treat a dead horse as a living horse doctor, and a real wise man will not let himself fall into a dead situation. To be the second Bezos again without falling into a dead end, the way is to take the initiative to rationally try and make mistakes. Like that captain, you start by testing your core assumptions. For example, if you still want to sell juice in the subway, the first thing you need to do is not to develop a juicer, but to use a home juicer to sell juice in the subway. If enough people buy it, you will proceed to the next step. In this way, once you find that the pattern is not successful, you will fail and your loss will be very small. If you verify step by step and find that this opportunity can be successful, you can get a huge return on your investment. And this process is the rational trial and error mentioned by Taleb. At this point, the main content of the book Anti-Fragility is basically finished. We first mentioned that most people have a misunderstanding, thinking that the world we live in is normal in most cases, and unexpected and uncertain events are rare and accidental, but in fact, a small number of accidental important events are important to the world. Our lives can be greatly affected, and these events are known as black swan events. Black swan events have 3 characteristics, which are unpredictable, significant, and ex post facto explainable. If we just think according to the cognition that accidents will not happen, our lives will be particularly fragile, and we will not be able to bear the consequences once accidents happen. Although the black swan event cannot be predicted, Taleb, the author of this book, gives a way to benefit from uncertainty, which is to turn himself into an anti-fragile system. There are 3 steps to achieve this. The first step is to avoid exposing yourself to negative black swan events, that is, try not to let yourself enter the field where the benefits may be limited but the price to be paid is very high. Only by avoiding these risks can we continue to develop. The second step is to use the barbell strategy to build anti-fragile capabilities under this premise, and put most of the resources on things with strong linear relationships, certain benefits, and low risks, and at the same time, put a small amount of resources on things with high risks and low returns. In the nonlinear range that may be very high, finally give up those medium risk and medium return things. Here, the barbell strategy can help you determine your maximum loss in advance, and it may bring unexpected returns. The third step, if you still want to go further in this process, then choose to be in the field of positive black swans, rationally and actively try and make mistakes, use the method of minimum trial and error, continuously increase your own probability, and control the loss cost, so as to increase the probability of gaining benefits when uncertain events occur. This is the end of this episode of the show. What do you think about it differently? Welcome to leave a message to discuss with everyone. Hey, if you like our channel, please subscribe us. Haha, remember to like it.